I wasn't supposed to be back until the evening. The train arrived ahead of schedule, and rather than wait for the car service my son arranged, I took a cab home. Just 3 days away in Vermont, visiting my sister. Kelsey, my daughter-in-law, had practically pushed me out the door. "You should go, Cora," she said, patting my hand. "Fresh air will do you good." She smiled, warm and reassuring, almost too warm. And I believed her. That's what made what I walked into all the more shocking. The front door was unlocked. Odd. The air inside smelled of lemon and lavender, far too clean. Silent. Still. I stepped inside and looked around. The entryway was tidy, but something felt off. The framed photos that once lined the hallway were gone. The rug was different. The umbrella stand gone. I moved into the living room. I froze. My antique mahogany sideboard was missing. The lace curtains I embroidered by hand had been replaced. The crystal figurines Charles gave me for our 10th anniversary gone. In the middle of the room sat a stack of cardboard boxes, each sealed with packing tape. A few were labelled "Old Stuff," "Attic," "Random Junk," "Cora." "To donate. Pick up. Monday 12 p.m. On top of one box, I saw a soft velvet pouch. My heart dropped. I rushed over and opened it. It was my mother's wedding ring. I gasped and opened the next box. Inside my wedding album, a silver music box from Prague, my baby's first shoes, yellowed letters tied in ribbon. "Kelsey," I shouted, panicked. She walked in from the kitchen holding a smoothie. "Oh, you're back early." My hands shook. "What is all this?" She glanced at the boxes casually. "I did a little decluttering. We've talked about simplifying, getting rid of things we don't use. I figured it was a good opportunity while you were away. You went through my things." She smiled again, like it was perfectly reasonable. "I was helping. These aren't random things. These are memories. Heirlooms. They were just sitting there collecting dust. Honestly, I thought I was doing you a favor. You don't even use any of it." I stepped back. I couldn't breathe. I turned, walked into the dining room. The cabinets were empty. The corner armoire was missing. Even the painting of Charles and me in Tuscany gone. I ran to the garage. More boxes, all neatly stacked and labeled. I dropped to my knees and tore one open. Inside a folded American flag, my late husband's dog tags a set of handwritten letters from his time overseas, a blue leather folder. I pulled it out. The cover read, "Estate Appraisal. Private copy, 2007. I opened it. Inside were pages of detailed inventories, photos, signatures, insurance values. Sapphire ring, $42,000. Vintage glass sculpture set, $31,000. Hemingway first edition, $56,000. Original oil painting from Florence, $25,000. Estimated total value, $678,000. My breath caught. Kelsey appeared behind me. "What's that?" she asked. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. Her voice lowered. "Is that receipts?" I turned the page. At the bottom was a signature my husband's. Below it, "Do not discard." Items appraised for legacy and legal protection. Kelsey reached out. I closed the folder and pulled it to my chest. "What is that?" she said again, more urgently. I stood. My voice was calm. "It's what you almost threw away." Her eyes darted between the boxes and the folder. "I didn't know. I swear. I thought it was just sentimental clutter." "No, you didn't think," I said sharply. "You assumed, and you nearly erased my entire life in a weekend. I didn't mean to. I don't care what you meant. I care what you did." She was silent. I pointed to the boxes. "You have until noon to return every single item back inside. If anything is missing, I will call the appraiser, the lawyer, and the police if I must." Her face drained of color. I stared her down. because now I had something more than memories. I had evidence. I had leverage. I had a reason to fight back. And this was only the beginning. What Kelsey didn't know was that she hadn't just donated items, she had activated a history she didn't understand, and a fire she couldn't put out. Stay with me until the very end. What happened after this would upend everything. And before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. Comment your city below. This is a story every family needs to hear. Before things became so cold, before the resentment and the boxes and the erasure, there was something real between us. I remember the first time I met Kelsey. She was nervous, tugging at the edge of her cardigan, standing beside my son Michael, like she didn't belong in our foyer. But I saw something in her eyes. Not insecurity, intelligence. Curiosity. That sharp way she scanned the house without even moving her head, like she was silently measuring her place in it. She had a kind of hunger that reminded me of myself back when I was still young and unsure of where I belonged. Michael had met her during his graduate fellowship. She was studying non-profit law, ambitious, proud, and razor sharp. But when she came to dinner that night, knees crossed tightly, barely touching her plate, she tried so hard to fit in. I made pot roast. She was vegan. I hadn't known, but she smiled anyway, complimented the plating, and quietly ate just the carrots and potatoes. That's when I knew she was trying. Hard. After dinner, she offered to help clean. I said no. At first, we weren't that kind of household. Guests relaxed, but she insisted. We talked over the dishes. She asked about Charles, about the framed photos on the wall, about the quilt in the den that she noticed was signed in the corner my grandmother's name. She noticed details. I liked her for that. Over the months that followed, Kelsey became a fixture. She brought pastries from her favorite cafe folded napkins into crisp little triangles, and once offered to organize my spice cabinet alphabetically. We laughed at the absurdity of it, but I let her do it. I had spent most of my life raising Michael alone after Charles passed away. Kelsey saw the loneliness that lingered in the corners of my life, and rather than tiptoe around it, she filled it. With thoughtful gestures, quiet conversation, and a rare kind of warmth. When they got engaged, she hugged me tightly and said, "I want you to feel like you're gaining a daughter, not losing a son." And for a while I did. I helped pay for their wedding, not because I was asked, but because I wanted to. I offered the use of our garden for the ceremony. I wore a dusty rose dress and stood next to her mother in the front row. We held hands during the vows. She called me Mom once quietly when no one else was around. I pretended not to notice, but I carried that word in my chest for weeks. After they married, they moved into the house, my house, while saving for their own place. At first, it felt like a blessing. The house, once too quiet, was filled with life again. Laughter over breakfast, the hum of Michael's laptop, the scent of Kelsey's herbal teas. It felt like a second chance at family. We created traditions together. Taco Tuesdays, game nights on Thursdays, Sunday walks at the farmer's market. On her first birthday, as part of the family, I gave her a bracelet that belonged to my mother. It wasn't extravagant, but it had meaning. She cried when I fastened it on her wrist. "You trust me with this?" she asked. Of course I said, because at the time I did. She brought me soup when I had the flu. She sat beside me during my MRI consult when they thought I might have a growth behind my eye. She ordered a second pair of eyeglasses for me when I lost mine, didn't even tell Michael, just handled it. Kelsey wasn't just Michael's wife. She became part of my rhythm, my routine. And when they told me they weren't in a rush to move out, that they'd rather save and help maintain the house with me, I agreed. It felt right, mutual, like a real partnership. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed the subtle shifts. The way she started suggesting we rearrange the furniture. The way she adjusted the thermostat without asking. The way she began organizing the pantry by her system, not mine. The way she started answering for Michael during family conversations. But at the time, I saw it as normal integration. She was building a home, contributing, molding her future. I didn't feel erased, not yet. I remember the night she brought home 3 little canvas prints for the hallway abstract shapes in neutral tones. She wanted to replace the older portraits of Charles and me with something modern, something with less nostalgia, she said. So the house feels lighter. I laughed. But nostalgia is the soul of this place. She paused, blinked once, then smiled. Of course. I didn't mean replace. I meant mix in a little balance. I took her at her word, because I wanted to believe she was still that girl who washed dishes beside me, who cried when I gave her a family heirloom, who made my son laugh louder than I'd heard in years. There was a softness to her back then, a sweetness. And when I think about everything that followed the decisions, the dismissals, the cruelty masked as efficiency, I try to remember that woman she once was. She didn't start out this way. We had real love between us. I know we did. She helped me catalogue the attic, once sorting old boxes of books and keepsakes. She held my high school diary and teased me about the terrible poetry. She tried on my vintage gloves and posed like a Hollywood starlet. She cried when she found a photograph of Charles holding newborn Michael in the hospital. She wasn't pretending, at least I don't think she was. We sat on the porch one evening during a thunderstorm, and she asked me what it was like being a widow at 39. I told her the truth. It's like being handed a key to a house you never wanted to enter. And once you step inside, nothing smells right again. She was quiet for a long time. Then she reached over and held my hand. No words, just warmth. That was the last time I remember feeling that kind of closeness between us. After that, things started to shift. But that story is for another part. This one is to remember the woman she once was, the daughter I believed I had, the person I trusted with my home, my heart, and the boxes she would one day tape shut. It started small. It always does. Little changes, slight corrections, adjustments too subtle to challenge, too insistent to ignore. The first time I noticed it was with the mail. I had always been the one to collect it. Part of my morning ritual slippers coffee step out wave to the neighbors, check the box. One day, I reached for the mailbox and found it empty. Odd, considering I knew the gas bill was due. Michael picked it up, Kelsey said when I asked. We're trying to streamline things. Less clutter. Streamline. I brushed it off. Maybe she was trying to be helpful again. She had always liked systems. But the next day I checked again, the mailbox was locked. When I asked for the key, Kelsey said brightly, we're just making sure nothing important gets lost. You shouldn't have to worry about paperwork anymore. The words stung more than I expected. I wasn't worried about paperwork. I was worried about the key. Next came the thermostat. I'd wake up, chilled the air conditioner running, even when the temperature dropped to the 50s. I would turn it off, only to find it back on an hour later. I asked Michael, but he hadn't noticed. Kelsey said she was adjusting it for energy efficiency. Then came the pantry. All the labels turned outward. Rows of matching containers with white minimalist stickers. My jars were gone. My handwritten labels, the ones I'd used for years, vanished. It's easier to keep track this way, Kelsey said, waving a barcode scanner in her hand. I've got everything logged in an app. But I knew where everything was, I said. Well, now we both do, she replied with a smile. At first I still believed these changes were benign, annoying but not malicious, until she started correcting me in front of Michael. Just little things, the wrong date for a birthday, a misremembered recipe. No, Cora, it wasn't time you used, it was tarragon. I checked your old notes. Actually, we did go to the Berkshires that summer, not Cape Cod. She always said it lightly, as if saving me from embarrassment. But each time Michael nodded slightly, like she was keeping the truth of our lives tidy. And then one afternoon it escalated. I had just finished folding the laundry when I noticed the linen closet looked off. Half the towels were missing. My floral stitched set from 1984 gone. When I asked, Kelsey didn't hesitate. Oh, I donated them. They were fraying at the edges. We have more than enough towels. You donated them without asking. They weren't in use. And they weren't exactly fresh. I didn't reply. But something in me folded that day like a sheet losing its crease. I began keeping track. Every week something was gone. A teacup, a pillowcase, my set of copper measuring spoons. She called it cleaning. I called it vanishing. Even the schedule shifted. I used to cook dinner 3 nights a week. Then it became 2. Then 1. Until finally, I was only invited to cook when Kelsey had a girls' night and didn't want to bother with the kitchen. We'll order in, she'd say. You should rest. Rest became her favorite word for me. You look tired. Don't strain yourself. No need to worry about that. I'll handle it. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. My calendar disappeared from the fridge. My notepad vanished from the counter. Even my favorite chair was replaced with a better back support version that squeaked when I sat. One day, I tried to help with dinner. She handed me a peeled carrot and said, "Why don't you slice this one for practice?" Practice. I had been cooking since before she was born. I didn't say anything. I just washed the carrot and took the knife. That night, Michael said nothing. He never did. That was the deepest cut of all. He used to be the one who double-checked if I'd taken my vitamins, who reminded Kelsey to ask me before rearranging the furniture, who called me champ when I fixed the garden hose or changed the light bulb on my own. Now he just smiled absently and said, "Kels runs a tight ship." It was meant as a compliment, but I wasn't crew. I was cargo, and slowly they were unloading me. The day I truly knew something had changed was when my neighbor Margaret stopped by. She brought a pie and stood awkwardly at the front step. "I heard you weren't feeling well," she said. "I'm fine," I replied. "Oh," she said. "Kelsey told me you'd been fading, that maybe you were starting to need some assistance." I stared at her. "Did she say that exactly?" Margaret hesitated. "She said she's keeping an eye on things, that you might be forgetting stuff." I thanked her for the pie and shut the door. Then I walked straight to the cabinet where I kept my documents. My power of attorney, my medical records, my financial papers. The drawer was locked. I hadn't locked it. I asked Michael about it that evening. "Oh," he said, surprised. "Kelsey said you wanted to keep things safer." She moved some papers to her folder so they wouldn't get mixed up. I went cold. My folder, my documents, my house. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake and listened to the quiet hum of the dishwasher and the occasional click of a phone being checked down the hall. I thought about every decision I'd let slide, every small change I hadn't resisted, every smile I'd accepted at face value. By morning, I had made a decision. I went to the attic. What once had been mine was now sterile labeled boxes, uniform bins, items moved out of reach. I looked for something, anything that still felt like mine. I found a single tin box tucked beneath an old blanket, inside my wedding earrings, a note from Charles, a yellowed clipping from our anniversary in the paper, and one more thing, a small notebook barely used. Blank pages except the first where Charles had written, "If something ever feels wrong, trust your gut and write it all down." So I did. That day I began writing again. Each change, each missing item, each conversation. I kept my voice low, my movements careful, my heart steady, because by then I finally understood. This wasn't just clutter she was clearing, it was me, and she was doing it one item, one drawer, one moment at a time. Not out of cruelty, but out of something colder. Efficiency. I wasn't being pushed out emotionally. I was being phased out administratively, like a forgotten line in a will, a placeholder in someone else's plan. And if I didn't act soon, I'd be boxed and sealed just like everything else. It wasn't just the photos that disappeared from the hallway. It was me, bit by bit, slow and deliberate. What began as minor adjustments turned into a systematic undoing of everything that made this house mine. It started with the living room. I returned home one afternoon from my doctor's appointment, only to find my armchair gone. The blue one. The one Charles bought for me on our 20th anniversary. It had sat in that corner for over 3 decades. In its place was a sleek, grey piece of furniture I had never seen before. I asked Kelsey where my chair had gone. It was lumpy, she replied. We donated it to a centre that helps single mums. It wasn't safe for your back. But you didn't ask. It was sagging. You never sit in it anymore. That was the first lie. I sat in it every evening. I read there. I prayed there. I cried there. I opened my mouth to argue, but Michael walked in with his phone pressed to his ear, kissed Kelsey's cheek, and went straight to the den. The matter was closed. I began to notice a pattern. Every few days, something else vanished. My lace tablecloth handmade by my aunt in 1962, gone. The cedar chest at the foot of my bed, the one that stored my wedding veil and my son's baby blanket, gone. My handmade pottery mugs from our first family road trip, replaced with Kelsey's monochrome ceramic set. Then came the bookshelf in the upstairs hallway, the one filled with family scrapbooks, Michael's drawings from preschool postcards from my sister in Ireland. One day I walked past and saw an empty wall. When I confronted Kelsey, she smiled. I scanned everything she said. Digital is safer. Where are the originals? She waved a hand. Stored safely. You don't need to worry about all the paper clutter. Stored where? She wouldn't say. Michael told me not to stress. Kels is just trying to help. Then came the moment I can never forget. It was Michael's birthday. I had baked his favorite chocolate sheet cake with almond frosting. I made it from scratch the way his grandmother used to. I decorated it myself, even added the little caramel initials like we used to do. I waited until after dinner, carrying the cake into the dining room with a proud smile. But when I got there, Kelsey was already standing with a different cake in her hands, a tiered white creation with gold leaf and fondant letters. Happy birthday, Michael. From all of us. Everyone clapped. She placed the cake on the table, then turned to me and said, "Oh, you made one too. That's sweet. Maybe we can freeze it?" I stood there holding the cake as if it had turned to stone in my hands. Michael didn't say anything. He just looked between us, smiled awkwardly, and began cutting the store-bought one. I walked back to the kitchen alone, placed my cake on the counter. The next morning it was gone. Not a slice, not a plate, not even a thank you. I never saw that cake again. She began introducing herself as lady of the house whenever guests visited. Friends of Michael's would arrive, and Kelsey would lead them through the rooms, pointing out her decor choices, her furniture updates, her feng shui flow. No mention of me, not even a nod. I wasn't retired, I was erased. Then came the blow I never saw coming. It was Easter. I had always hosted Easter brunch. It was tradition. I decorated with spring pastels, arranged tulips, baked hot cross buns, and deviled eggs. The grandkids from Michael's cousins always looked forward to my jelly bean jars. That year, I began preparing as usual. I had everything laid out: the menu, the linens, even the seating chart. The morning before Easter, I found a flyer on the fridge. Join us for Easter brunch at the country club. hosted by Kelsey and Michael. My name wasn't on it. Neither was my address. I stood there frozen. Kelsey walked in and smiled. Oh, good, you saw the invite. It'll be fun to do something different this year. You changed our tradition without telling me. It's just a brunch. You can come too. I already prepared everything. Well, she said, shrugging, you didn't tell us that. You didn't ask. Her smile vanished. I didn't think I had to, she said sharply. That was when I realized something deeper. She wasn't just tidying, she was replacing. Every item removed was a memory overwritten. Every tradition cancelled was a bond severed. And Michael said, she's just trying to make things easier. You know how Kels is. Yes. I was beginning to understand exactly how Kels was. One afternoon, I returned home from a walk and found the locks changed. At first, I thought I had made a mistake. I checked my keys again, then again. Nothing. I rang the bell. Kelsey opened the door, eyebrows raised. Oh? Sorry, the locksmith came early. We've had a few packages go missing, so I asked them to upgrade the system. You didn't give me a new key. She tilted her head. Michael said you usually use the garage keypad. That's not the point. I didn't think you'd mind. She said it like always, lightly, like it didn't matter. But it did. Everything mattered. Because no matter how small the item, how minor the inconvenience, they added up, like drops in a bucket. And I was drowning. I called my sister. She offered to come stay for a while. I said no. I wasn't ready to give up. I began documenting. Notes, dates, photographs of before and after spaces, receipts of donations with my name nowhere on them. I searched the house for my items. Some were in boxes. Others I never found again. I discovered my jewelry box, the one Charles gave me on our 25th anniversary, hidden in the back of Kelsey's closet. When I asked her, she said, "Oh, I was going to polish it for you." It had been in her closet for 3 months. I asked her not to touch my things again. She said, of course. The next week, my photo albums were gone. She said they were in the cloud. The cloud, where memories go to vanish under passwords I don't have. But the final wound came from Michael. We were sitting on the porch. I tried to speak to him. Really speak. I feel like I'm disappearing, I told him. He didn't look at me. He was watching his phone. You're overthinking it, Mom. Kels has a system. Just let her handle it. Handle what my life? He sighed. You're too sensitive lately. I wanted to cry. But instead I just nodded. And that night I realized something terrifying. I was being treated not as a burden, not even as a mother-in-law. I was being treated like an obstacle, an object, an outdated version of something they had outgrown. And soon, if I didn't do something, I wouldn't just lose my place in this home. I'd lose myself completely. I always believed people revealed themselves in moments of chaos. But with Kelsey, it was the quiet that gave her away. One morning, while Kelsey was out at her yoga class and Michael was working in the basement, I decided to clean the sunroom. The one place in the house that still felt untouched by her routines. As I opened the window to let in some breeze, a stack of unopened mail caught my eye, wedged between a magazine rack and a basket of rolled towels. The envelopes were thick, official-looking, addressed not to me, but to Michael. Curiosity wasn't what made me look. It was instinct. The same instinct that told me to check the bottom drawer when I couldn't find my jewelry box. The same instinct that told me Kelsey didn't just misplace things, she repurposed them quietly. I sat down and began sorting. One envelope had the logo of a law firm on it, Warner and Hales, LLP. I recognized it. Charles and I had used them years ago to draft our estate plan, but this letter was recent, and it wasn't addressed to me. It was a copy of a filing, not a will update, but a petition for quiet title action. I froze. Quiet title actions were legal tools to resolve disputes about property ownership. And this one listed our house. more specifically my house, filed by Michael. Guided by Kelsey, I flipped through the pages. Attached was a memorandum citing the deed tax records and contributing renovations and updates funded exclusively by residents Michael and Kelsey T. The letter argued that the home, though still in my name, was no longer solely under the dominion and operational control of the grantor. In other words, they were laying legal groundwork, not to steal, to absorb, piece by piece. I couldn't breathe. I reread the document 3 times, and then I saw the note clipped to the back, handwritten in Kelsey's tight, upright penmanship. Michael, have the lawyer revise Clause 3. We can't afford to delay this another quarter. The appraisal gap gives us leverage. Appraisal gap. I didn't understand, not fully, but I remembered the folder I'd found weeks before. The one tucked between my belongings, the estate appraisal Charles and I had done in 2007. The one she tried to donate along with everything else. She hadn't known it was in there, but now she did. I returned the documents exactly where I found them. I wasn't ready yet, not without proof, so I waited. 2 days later, I got it. She was in the kitchen phone on speaker pacing. She thought I was in the backyard tending to the bird feeders, but I was standing just beyond the stairwell behind the pantry door out of sight. I told him already, she said. We can't keep waiting for her to warm up to the idea. She's never going to leave. And as long as she's in the house, we can't refinance without her consent. A pause. No, she hasn't seen the papers. But I need you to make sure the transfer wording is bulletproof. If we push this to probate, we lose 6 months. Another pause. Michael's on board. He just needs time. He won't confront her. A third pause. Then quieter. No, she has no idea. She still thinks we're redecorating. But if she finds that appraisal, it's over. It has the original figures. The gap will close if she contests. She ended the call. I stood there, gripping the pantry door. If she found the appraisal, it's over. She didn't know. She didn't know I had already found it. She didn't know I had already read it, hidden it, scanned it, and emailed a copy to myself and to my sister. That evening, I called my friend Harriet, an old schoolmate of Charles's, and a retired probate paralegal. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. She told me the truth. Kelsey wasn't just pushing boundaries. She was actively preparing to challenge my legal authority as the owner. Harriet used words I wasn't ready for. Prepossession maneuver, elder displacement, constructive coercion. Each one hit like ice water. I spent that night in my room behind a locked door, rereading old letters from Charles. One of them, a note from 1993, ended with this line: "If someone ever tries to rewrite the walls of this house without you, you remind them who carved the foundation." The next morning, I went to the attic. I pulled out every document I had: tax receipts, insurance statements, our original mortgage certificate, Charles's military pension papers. I organized everything. I made a new file folder, one Kelsey wouldn't find. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called our old attorney. He answered. He remembered me. I told him what was happening. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I simply stated the facts. When I finished, there was silence. Then he said, "Cora, if they go forward with this, you may have a claim under elder financial abuse statutes." I swallowed hard. He continued, "You have rights. And if what you're describing is accurate, we'll build a wall so tight they won't be able to touch a tile in that house without your signature." I thanked him, hung up, and sat still for a long time. The truth wasn't just painful. It was humiliating, because I had trusted her, loved her, opened my home to her, and now she was trying to take it from beneath my feet, with forms, with filings, with strategy. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't thoughtlessness. It was premeditated replacement. I no longer had the luxury of second chances or hopeful conversation. I needed protection. I needed power. And I would not let them take anything more from me. not without a fight. I never meant to become the villain. When I married Michael, I didn't just marry a man. I married his house, his traditions, his history, his mother. I told myself I could handle it, that I could adapt, that with time I'd find a place in the home he was so loyal to. But time only deepened the divide. From the outside, Cora seemed gracious, calm, even welcoming. But inside that calm was a firm, immovable current one that pulled everything back to the way it used to be. She never said the words, but I could feel it in the way she paused before handing me the keys to the house, in the way she insisted on cooking for Michael 3 times a week, even when I had already planned meals, in the way she corrected my every suggestion, with a long pause and a polite smile as if saying, "I'll allow it. For now." It started small. Michael and I had been married only 3 months when we had our first argument about the pantry. I had reorganized it, added clear bins, removed expired jars, made space. Cora walked in, took one look and froze. "These labels are gone," she said. "They were falling off," I replied. "I can reprint them if you'd like." She didn't respond, but that night, Michael told me you should have asked first. I laughed. "I live here," I said. "Yeah, but this is her system. Just for now." For now. That phrase haunted me. Every decision I made had to pass through invisible approval. And even when she didn't object, she left a trail of disapproval in the air, subtle, heavy, and unspoken. She said she wanted us to feel at home, but home shouldn't feel like a performance. When we talked about buying our own place, Michael hesitated. "We'd be throwing away free rent," he said. "We can save faster here. She wants us here." He was right. On paper, it made sense. But emotionally, I lived in a museum curated by a woman who saw herself as irreplaceable. I was constantly adjusting, choosing my words, keeping the peace. Then came the Easter incident. I didn't know she had planned brunch. She never mentioned it. Michael and I had booked the country club weeks in advance. He thought it'd be a nice surprise. I believed him. So when I saw her face that morning, the devastation beneath the mask of civility, something inside me cracked. Because I knew how that felt. I'd seen that expression in my own mother's eyes years ago, when she realized my grandmother had rewritten her will behind her back. The same mix of pain, betrayal, and bitter understanding. I didn't want to be the kind of woman who caused that expression, but I didn't want to be the kind of woman who disappeared to avoid causing it either. I began keeping my own notebook, not out of revenge, out of self-preservation. Every time I made a change, I wrote down the reason. The towel sets full of mold along the hems, the sideboard termites, the chair cracked leg unrepairable. The photo albums scanned and stored for safekeeping after she left them in the sunroom, and a leak almost destroyed them. Every act had logic, but logic and love rarely coexist peacefully. Then came the documents. The lawyer was my idea, not to challenge her, but to prepare. Michael and I wanted to refinance and invest. The house was in her name, but he had paid the taxes for 3 years. I handled maintenance. I paid for the kitchen upgrades. It was only fair. We asked her to co-sign once, and she said, "Let's wait a little longer." Then again, "Let me think on it." Then silence. I watched months go by. Interest rates rose, opportunities slipped. So yes, I drafted the petition. Not to take, to protect. We didn't intend to throw her out. But we couldn't keep living under someone else's silent veto forever. Michael hesitated. He always hesitated. He loved her deeply. I never tried to take that from him. But I also loved him, and I refused to let that love drown in guilt and nostalgia. Then came the folder. That blue appraisal folder changed everything. I didn't know she still had it. I thought it was long gone, filed somewhere in her mystery cabinet under a stack of linens from 1982. When I found it, when I saw the numbers, I panicked. Not because of the money, because it undermined everything: our case, our plans, our control. She had leverage now, and leverage means power. I never wanted war, but I wasn't going to surrender either. So I planned, efficiently, carefully, quietly. Yes, I went too far. I admit it. But if you've ever felt like a guest in your own home for 5 years, you'd understand why I couldn't wait anymore. I didn't hate her. I just couldn't live under her anymore. I wanted space, autonomy, freedom. Not from Michael, from her shadow. And if that makes me the villain in her story, so be it. It began with a ring, not a phone call, not a knock. Just a dull metallic clatter behind the front gate, a sound so faint I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't been standing by the window with the curtains slightly open. I stepped outside and found a padded envelope on the stone path. No return address. Inside, my husband's old army ring, the one that had disappeared from my bedroom drawer nearly 6 months ago, and a single handwritten note. "You're not crazy. Check the backyard shed." A friend. I looked around. No one. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the driveway. Kelsey's car was gone, Pilates night, and Michael was still at work. I took the envelope inside and stared at it for a long time. Then I went out back. The shed hadn't been opened in years. Charles used it for gardening tools and old tarps. I had assumed it was mostly empty or full of rusting junk, but when I unlatched the door and pulled it open, I was stunned. Neatly stacked along the far wall were 6 boxes. My boxes. Labeled in my handwriting: guest room closet, dining china, fragile photo, frames, Italy, Cora, jewelry, heirlooms. I bent down and opened one slowly. Inside, everything was wrapped in tissue paper. The blue Delft vase from Amsterdam, my lace collar from my wedding dress, a collection of handwritten postcards from my mother, things I had asked about, things Kelsey had said were donated damaged or never existed. They were here, hidden, intact. The sense of betrayal returned like a wave, sharper this time, because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. And someone knew. Someone had sent that ring. Someone who had seen everything. Someone watching from the edges of this story. That night I made 2 calls. First to Harriet, my sister's friend, and the retired paralegal who had helped me organize my documents weeks ago. Second to Miguel. Miguel had been our handyman for years, since before Michael was born. He had fixed our gutters, patched our drywall, even built the shelves in the den. He also knew this house better than anyone. I hadn't seen him since Charles's funeral. But when I called and explained what was happening, his voice tightened. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. He came by the next morning, tall, grey-haired, quiet. The same gentle presence he'd always had. He walked through the shed, examined the boxes, and nodded. "I moved them here," he said simply. I stared at him. "Why?" He looked me in the eye. "Because she paid me to move them discreetly. Said it was temporary storage during a remodel. But something didn't sit right. So I left a note in one of the boxes." "What kind of note?" "A question, written under the lid. I wanted to see if you'd ever open it." I ran to check. In the box labeled Cora, jewelry, heirlooms, I peeled back the first layer. Underneath the flap was a sticky note. "If you're reading this, she lied to you." Miguel stood in the doorway, arms folded. I didn't know the full story, he said. But I've worked in enough homes to recognize when someone's being removed without consent. Quietly. One item at a time. My throat tightened. He continued. "She called it decluttering. But the boxes were sealed like evidence, labeled to vanish. I recognized it. I've seen it before." I asked him for help, not just to document the boxes, but to go through the house with fresh eyes to spot what else had been moved, stored, misrepresented. He agreed. Over the next 3 days, Miguel came by during Kelsey's yoga hours. He took photos, catalogued missing items, measured furniture placements that no longer matched the floor plan. He checked digital thermostats, smart locks, Wi-Fi routers, anything that might be controlling access or tracking movement. And he found something else. Hidden behind the electrical panel in the garage was a small device, a signal booster, unusual for a residential home. Miguel traced the wires and confirmed what I feared. Someone had installed a discreet security camera facing my bedroom hallway. Not Michael, not me. I asked Miguel what to do. Start protecting yourself legally, he said. You have enough for a preliminary case. Harriet agreed. We met over tea in her garden. She brought her old briefcase and filled it with everything I had: the appraisal copy, the storage photos, the shed discovery, and most importantly, the recording. Because after Miguel's visit, I had done something I never thought I would. I bought a small voice recorder, and I carried it with me, clipped beneath my sweater, nestled in a flower vase hidden under the napkin holder. One evening, when Michael was working late, I placed it in the kitchen and stepped out. Kelsey was on the phone again. I only caught the tail end. As soon as the rest is moved, I'll say she requested it. If she denies it, I'll say her memory's failing. She doesn't even notice when things are gone. Pause. No, she has no idea about the petition. She thinks we're still saving. Honestly, by the time she catches up, it'll be done. Another pause. Worst case, we push for mental capacity review. Miguel's gone, so no one will contradict. But Miguel wasn't gone. And now I had the recording. The final piece came unexpectedly. A woman named Diane, an appraiser who had worked with Charles and me 15 years ago, called after I sent a quiet inquiry about a second evaluation. She still had our file, still remembered Charles. But she also remembered something strange. Someone from your household called a few months ago, asking if the records could be revised to reflect lower values. Who, she hesitated, a woman, younger, asked for digital copies, said it was for tax reporting. She never sent the files. Something felt off. I knew exactly who had made that call. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed: documents, witnesses, recordings, patterns of concealment, legal threats, property maneuvering, and a network of silent allies who were finally stepping forward. I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, I felt steady, prepared, seen, and soon, very soon, I would make sure Kelsey saw everything too, not through confrontation, but through exposure, public, precise, and impossible to explain away. It wasn't rage that brought me to that moment. It was calculation, cold, clear, necessary. I chose the setting carefully: Michael's birthday dinner, a small family gathering. Nothing grand. Just the four of us and a few close friends. Kelsey planned the evening, of course. Catered charcuterie, modern floral centerpieces, a linen table runner in shades of beige and stone. No trace of our family traditions, no chocolate sheet cake, no hand-stitched tablecloth from my aunt. The table was hers now, but not for long. I had waited patiently, deliberately, through weeks of evidence gathering, carefully working with Harriet and Miguel behind the scenes. Every file was organized, every document notarized, every recording reviewed by counsel. I wasn't just ready to confront, I was ready to present. It began quietly over the main course. Kelsey raised her glass for a toast. To Michael, she said, smiling. For being the glue of this family, and for building a future with such generosity and foresight. Michael blushed, touched, but I saw it in her eyes, that flicker of triumph, the certainty that I had already faded. I let her finish, then I stood. I have something to say, I said, gently placing my cloth napkin down. Kelsey tilted her head. Oh, a toast. In a way, I replied. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small folder, thick, navy blue, clean edges. Her face changed instantly. Michael looked confused. "What's that?" "This," I said, "is a copy of the appraisal Charles and I commissioned. The one that valued this house and everything in it. The one that Kelsey tried to have revised without authorization. Illegally." Silence. Kelsey's eyes narrowed. "Cora, I don't think this is the—" I raised a hand. "No interruptions. Not tonight." I turned to Michael. "You remember your father's ring? The one you thought we lost?" He nodded. I pulled it from the inner pocket of the folder. "I received it 2 weeks ago. Left on the porch. Returned by someone who found it in a donation box." His brow furrowed. Kelsey shifted in her chair. I continued. "This house, this home, was not just a place. It was built by two people who saved, struggled, and sacrificed to leave something behind. It was never meant to be erased, not by convenience, not by deception, and certainly not behind closed doors." I placed the folder in front of him. "In here is everything I've discovered over the last 2 months. Records, transfers, audio recordings, legal consultations, testimonies, boxes of belongings moved without consent, private papers intercepted, surveillance devices placed outside my bedroom." Gasps around the table. Kelsey laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous." "Surveillance? Are you serious?" I looked at her. Deadpan. "You installed a signal booster in the garage that fed into a remote recording device. Miguel found it. You had mail redirected. You withheld legal documents from Michael. You filed a quiet title petition with intent to assume ownership without my knowledge. And when that failed, you discussed the possibility of forcing a mental capacity review." Kelsey stood up. "Michael, this is insane. Are you just going to let her?" He looked at her slowly, his eyes no longer confused. "Did you really do all that?" he asked. Her voice wavered. "I was trying to help. You know how much pressure we've been under. She wouldn't talk to us about the refinance. She kept saying, 'Not yet.' And we needed to move forward. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. You were trying to erase me," I said. Her mouth snapped shut. I stepped forward. "You didn't just move my things. You dismantled my life. You replaced traditions, silenced objections, and treated history like clutter. You didn't act like a daughter. You acted like a landlord." Michael stood up now, too. He looked at both of us, then at the folder. "I need to see all of this," he said. "You will," I replied. "My attorney has everything. You'll receive a copy tomorrow." Kelsey grabbed his arm. "Michael, she's twisting this. Do you know how emotional she gets?" He pulled away. "No, this isn't about emotions anymore." There was silence again, the kind that settles like dust, fine, undeniable everywhere. I looked around the table. "You all deserve to know," I said to the guests. "Because this wasn't just a private matter. This is what happens when silence is mistaken for weakness, when family becomes strategy, and when kindness is mistaken for permission." I picked up my purse. "I'll be staying with my sister for a while," I said calmly. "But the next time we sit down together, it will be in a lawyer's office." I turned to Kelsey one last time. "I may be old, but I'm not forgettable. And I am most certainly not disposable." Then I walked out. The front door never felt heavier, but the moment it shut behind me, I knew. I wasn't walking away from defeat. I was walking towards something I hadn't felt in years: power. The letter arrived 3 days after the dinner. Certified mail, stamped with the seal of the Superior Court of California, Los Angeles County. Inside, official notification of my petition for injunctive relief and protective declaration under California Elder Financial Abuse Law, WIC 415610. Accompanying it, a legal brief prepared by my attorney William Carter, a man Charles and I had trusted with our estate for nearly 2 decades. I sat in the waiting room of his office, the documents laid out neatly in front of me, each page reinforcing one singular truth. I had not overreacted. I had been preyed upon, systematically, deliberately, and now legally provable. William leaned back in his chair, tapping the affidavit Miguel had signed. Your handyman's testimony is stronger than you think, he said. He's not just a third party. He has timelines, names, specific instructions from your daughter-in-law, and no motive to lie. He tapped another page. And this, the recording. This is gold. She speaks plainly, directly, uses legal language. Then he smiled. And your documentation is immaculate. Over the next 3 days, we filed everything. Motion to freeze all unilateral modifications to the property deed. Petition for declaratory ownership. Request for forensic audit of all donation activity and resale value. Notice of revocation of all previous informal agreements due to coercion and lack of full consent. And most importantly, a motion to block any future power of attorney filings or capacity evaluations unless court-ordered and medically verified. I wasn't just defending my house, I was protecting my agency. The legal wheels turned quickly, thanks in part to the urgency William emphasized in our filing, citing ongoing psychological manipulation, deceptive coercion, and digital concealment. By the time the first hearing date was set, Kelsey had already received her summons. Michael, too. He called me the day after it arrived. "Mom," he said quietly, "why didn't you talk to me first?" "I did," I replied. "Many times. You didn't hear me. Now the court will." There was silence. I read everything he said eventually. I didn't know half of it. That's the point. He asked if we could settle privately. I said that would depend on her willingness to submit a signed statement admitting misconduct, including a full list of items she removed, sold, or relocated without my permission. She refused. So we moved forward. The court date arrived. Inside Department 2B, Judge Elias Goodman, a seasoned elder law jurist with a sharp eye for manipulation, reviewed the documents in silence before speaking. "Mrs. Keating," he said, addressing Kelsey, "you are not being charged criminally at this time, but the civil petition before me outlines a pattern of conduct that, if proven, qualifies as predatory under elder protection statutes." Kelsey's lawyer, a clean-cut man with a tablet and a polite voice, argued that differences in generational communication styles had led to misunderstandings and discomfort, but not illegality. Then he made a mistake. He suggested that I had been overly sensitive to modern efficiency measures, and that Mrs. Keating was attempting to modernize a shared space in line with her and her husband's needs. Judge Goodman leaned forward. "Sir," he said calmly, "are you implying that secretly transferring property recording conversations without consent and pre-filing mental capacity reviews is simply modern efficiency?" The lawyer stammered. William stood. "Your Honor." He said, "We have video evidence, notarized testimony, a witness with no financial stake, and digital timestamps indicating that Mrs. Keating's intent was not to manage the home, but to disinherit its rightful owner through administrative attrition." The judge nodded. By the end of the day, the following rulings were made. A temporary protective order against Kelsey, preventing her from making any alterations to the home, removing property, accessing estate files, or discussing financial or legal topics with Cora Keating directly. A court-ordered inventory to be completed within 21 days by a certified estate accountant. A revocation of cohabitation privileges for the Keatings pending further review unless Cora consents in writing. An order for psychological evaluation, not of me, but of the household environment for indicators of coercive control. The gavel struck, the courtroom emptied, and I stood taller than I had in years. Outside, Michael waited. He didn't speak at first. Then he said, "I thought we were helping you." "No," I said. "You were helping yourselves and pretending it was care." His eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in months. Regret. Kelsey didn't come home that night. She checked into a hotel and emailed William the next day her first attempt at negotiation. Too late. I wasn't interested in compromise anymore. I didn't want repayment. I wanted accountability. And now the law was on my side. I left the house before sunrise. No ceremony, no boxes. Just a weekend bag, a half-packed suitcase, and a handwritten letter folded inside my coat pocket. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. It was never about the house. It was about reclaiming space, not just physical, but emotional, legal, generational. For the first time in years, I was walking forward, not waiting behind. I moved in with my sister Jean in Pacific Grove. Her guest room was small, cluttered with vintage clocks and quilted cushions, but it smelled like cinnamon and felt like memory. She let me be quiet, let me rest. For the first week, I slept more than I spoke. For the second, I started walking the coastal trail every morning. By the third, I was laughing again, a sound I hadn't trusted in months. One afternoon, while sipping tea by the window, Jean asked, "Are you angry?" I thought about it for a moment, then said I was, but not anymore, because anger lives in the body like a debt. And I had paid it back in full, not with vengeance, but with clarity, with facts, with law, with grace, sharpened by boundary. The court proceedings continued, but I didn't attend every hearing. William kept me informed. Kelsey's lawyer attempted mediation. Michael sent a letter, not an apology, but an admission. He hadn't known how deep it had gone. He hadn't wanted to see. I didn't blame him. Not anymore. Some men don't recognize control when it's gentle, strategic, and clothed in charm. But blindness is not the same as innocence. I sent back one response, a single page. I am no longer afraid of being misunderstood. I only ask that going forward you let truth live in the open, not beneath the surface where damage grows in silence. He never replied, but silence finally felt like peace, not punishment. 2 months after the injunction was granted, William called with news the estate review was complete. Every item removed had been documented, every claim substantiated. Every attempt to distort the legal structure had failed. The house remained in my name. The court barred Kelsey from re-entering the property for 12 months pending re-evaluation. Michael moved into an apartment 2 blocks away from his office. I never visited it. Some losses are not tragedies. They're evolutions. With Jean's help, I began building something new, not a second life, but a next chapter. I donated items on my own terms. I kept what mattered. I took Charles's old journal and began writing in it again every morning 1 page. Not of pain, of perspective, of lessons. And one afternoon I received a letter in the mail. From Kelsey. No apology, just 7 lines. I read the appraisal folder. Every page, every note, every photo. I understand now. It wasn't junk, it was legacy. I was wrong. I folded the letter and placed it beside the others, not to keep it, but to remember that even pride sometimes softens. And that understanding doesn't always come in time to repair, but it can arrive in time to release. Today I walk every morning. I make my own tea. Wear Charles's old cardigan. Laugh with Jean on the porch while gulls sweep the sky. And when people ask me how I survived losing control of my home, I tell them, I didn't lose it. I reclaimed it, starting with myself. Because sometimes justice doesn't come like a hammer. It comes like a door slowly opening when you finally stop waiting for permission to walk through. To anyone watching who feels pushed out of your own life, boxed away, or made to feel invisible, you are not weak for loving deeply, but you are stronger than you know when you choose not to disappear. You are not too old to begin again. You are just in the perfect moment to remind the world that you're still here and that your story still matters. And if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly erased, don't shout. Stand, speak, prove. And never ever let anyone fold you up like you were meant to be discarded. Because a legacy doesn't live in things, it lives in those who refuse to be forgotten.